children, although when the county commissioner mentioned he had 4 kids, I thought, well, that shoots my theory down. Some are calling, especially the younger boomers, the anxious generation. They feel like they're facing an uncertain economic future, but I bet a lot of the older boomers feel the same way. So we'll come back to the boomers later. And here's the lost slide from earlier. Okay, so looking at Colorado now, we can see the same trends in the US and the global data. The number of people aged 65 and over in the US is going to be 3 times what it was in 2000 by the year 2030. So the top line shows the year 2030, and the bottom line shows the year 2000. So you can see by 2030, that line on the top is about 3 times the size of the one at the bottom. Okay. You gotta just pour a cup of, or a glass of wine and sit down and look at this stuff. So, that's probably why my papers were mixed up. They did have wine at the party last night that the board had. Thank you. Okay, this is a map familiar to many people who work in Colorado's aging network. I can see it in my sleep. It shows the 16 area agency on aging regions, and I've circled Larimer County. While some of these regions are multi-county, some, like Larimer, are one county, single county. And it's important to look at this type of map because federal and state money often gets allocated based on maps like this and the demographic statistics that underlie these maps. We also need to pay attention to where the data comes from that is being used to allocate funds. Some of the data that I'm talking about today actually translates into money being allocated to different areas. When we look at Larimer County, what we'll see is that while it has many elders in the middle and upper income levels, many fall at or near poverty as well. So you have both here, just like many places do. There's a few counties where the vast majority of people are wealthy, very wealthy. Some of our colleagues come and talk about that. But usually it is a mix. Based on information from the Colorado Department of Local Affairs and many other sources, we know that Larimer County is a very attractive place to retire. And you know why? I know you do know, because you live here. This is due to the low density, the rural lifestyle, and the open space. The full urban health care services and the university are also draws for retirees. But I do want to mention that first bullet, affluence, that is a does not equal sign, does not equal that everybody is doing okay. In areas where there's quite a bit of middle and upper income population, it's hard to remember there are very many people who need help. So, just because it's an affluent community doesn't mean there are some people who need assistance. Because with increased age, the higher likelihood of poverty does exist. There are some physical health declines. Older people often tend to have lower quality housing. There are increased mental health challenges that come with aging, and we often see more females who have less income. But there's also the positives. Now we need to know what the positives are. There's the potential for increased volunteerism and activity. Mentoring. Can't believe I was called a mentor. That's very meaningful to me. Family contributions. A lot of older people are the glue that keeps their families together. They provide a lot of support. And then paid workforce participation is really critical. And many of our older citizens want to work and can. When this data was put together in 2004, Larimer County accounted for 5.7% of the state's older population. In this case, we're talking about the 60 and over population. The latest data that we have available from the State Office on Aging, I got that a few weeks ago, from July 2008, says that Larimer now accounts for 6% of the state's older people. Slight increase. Did you know that, Margaret? So Larimer has about 45,000 people who are 60 and over. That was give or take a few. And in the state, there's about 753,000 older people. Again, it's important to note that some services monies are allocated based on the figures that we're talking about. When the National Research Center did this study in 2004, they were asked to project out to the year 2012 because that's when the Larimer County's next aging plan was to begin, and it was the first time we asked for this kind of information. But what this shows is the 60 to 74 age group is going to continue to grow in Larimer. That's the middle bars that are age 60 to 74. That is a big, big growth. Between 2008 and 2012, in just 4 years, this age group is going to grow by 28% in Larimer County. So the 60 to 74 age group. A lot of positives there. A lot of them will volunteer, continue to work, can mentor, and probably, will not need services as much as the 75 and over population. This pie represents the 294,000 residents of all ages in Larimer County that we estimated last year in 2008. At that time, forget about all the previous numbers. Let's start fresh. 15% of Larimer's residents were aged 60 and over. So 15% of Larimer's residents were aged 60 and over. That's the same percentage that Colorado had. 15% of Colorado's population was also aged. So in one sense, you could say Larimer looks just like the state. That's not exactly true, but in terms of the number of older people, that is true, the percentage. This is another chart that shows the proportion of female by age. We do know that women tend to live longer, and what I want to tell you is, again, Larimer resembles Colorado very, very much in this regard, the gender breakdown. See that last column? That's the 85 and over female population. So of the older 85 and over, 71% are women in Larimer County. In Colorado, it's about 70.3%, so very similar breakdowns in terms of men versus women in later life. So Larimer looks a lot like the state there. Marital status is important because it can impact later life in a number of ways. Marriage can increase economic support, emotional support, and provide practical help. Older men are more likely to be married. Older women are more likely to be widowed. That is why, in part, some have called population aging primarily a women's problem. Have you heard that? So let's talk a bit more about changing family structures and how they affect aging. Some of you may know these people in this photo. While the parents of baby boomers had lots of children per family, the boomers did not follow suit, as I said earlier. With fewer children and many living at a distance, baby boomers are likely going to experience the need to get help outside the family. This chart shows that by 2040, 21% of frail elders will have no children to assist them. So 1 out of 5 frail elder in the US will not have any children to turn to. By now, most of us have heard of the term sandwich generation, referring to people of a certain age who provide assistance to older parents or grandparents and children at the same time. This is largely an issue for the youngest of the baby boomers who have one or both parents still alive. So you can see both still alive is the blue. 55% of the youngest boomers still have both parents alive. At this time, 5% of the state's rural older residents live in Larimer County. I'll be honest, I thought it was higher before I put this together. Many of us in the room know that there's a call to increase services for older people in rural areas. There has been for a long time, but it's still as strong as ever. I've heard a lot of providers argue that it's not cost effective to serve rural areas, but it is very certain that people live everywhere. People are going to live in rural areas and they're going to need services. So rather than just say you need to move, which I am hearing, we need to figure out how to provide services to the rural seniors.